Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
The topic of this workshop is now about sex for men. The following reading is taken from the page 69 and 70 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off track. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We would hardly be human if we didn't. We earnestly pray for the right idea for guidance, for the right ideal for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. The format of this workshop is for the speaker to share for approximately 20 to 25 minutes, with the remaining time for questions and answers. Please keep your questions to the topic of the workshop. If you need to share in a general way, please avail yourself of the marathon meetings being held in the Pasadena room off the hotel lobby. I would now like to introduce Brian, our speaker. Okay.
I'm Brian. I'm an alcoholic, and I want to thank Linwood for asking me to do this. I just turned 6 years sober. This is my third time sober. I'm HIV positive 20 years this year, and I'm feeling really lucky. I got interested actually in sex and sobriety, in a different way in the last couple of years. First of all, let me just tell you that, I was a whore. From the time I can remember, I sought out older men. I sought out guys that, that would make me feel loved, basically. I look back on it now, and I just, my dad was really cold, and but I just loved the attention, and it just sort of grew and grew and grew, and then I discovered crystal meth, and it grew and grew and grew, and it got obsessive, and but I got to tell you, I had great times out there. I had the most amazing sex I ever had, and but things get different, and the first time I got sober was about 4.5 years of still looking for that kind of acceptance, still looking for validation through sex, and I was about 40 pounds less than I am now, and it was a lot easier. But that was back when we were doing 976 calls, and you get on the phone and just go, you hot, yeah, click. If you heard that voice, click. The next one, it was before the internet. But and then internet sex was the thing for a while. This time around, when I got sober, the first couple of years, first 3 years were really, I loved the attention again. It was all about getting attention. It was all about validation. It was all about wanting to be loved. And I went to the internet. I didn't like to go to bathhouses because I was always afraid I was going to run into some big old queen going, "Girl, been to a meeting?" And I just was, not going to work for me. I sort of like to, take my anonymity into those places with me. So, I found this one little sex club, and I loved it, and it was fun, and they closed down, and I've never been to another one since. And I also stopped going online. And actually, what happened was, what happened was, I had, when I turned, I guess I was about 4.5 years sober, I had 3 friends of mine, all with over 5 years of sobriety. 2 of them I got really close with while, we were real sober brothers. And and all three of them slipped around sex within 3 weeks of each other. And one of them died. And, I'm also a psychology student. I'm my third year in school, and I got my psychology degree last year. And there were a couple of things that just sort of came together around sex for me. I've also had the luxury of being asked to clean the house out before parents get there when somebody goes off to rehab or when somebody dies, and I've known people well enough, to be the one that goes in there and cleans up before mom and dad come. And I've done that about 4 or 5 times, and there are 3 things that I found in common with every one of those situations. There were lots of drug paraphernalia, pipes and, all that stuff, needles, razor blades, lots and lots of sex toys, porno videos, sex toys, slings, stuff you just wouldn't want mom and dad to see, And but the third thing that all of these places had in common when I go in and clean up was tons and tons of spiritual books on God. And dog-eared, these were dog-eared books. They had been read, and it just sort of struck me. And I think it had to do with the fact that I was so focused on psychology, because it just reminded me what a huge void we try to fill with sex. And I'm guilty of that myself. And it was a really sobering experience, the 3rd and 4th time when I went into these places. And it just really occurred to me that, whatever we look for, we will find. And if I'm looking for sex, I'll find it. But if I'm looking for God, I'll find it too. And so I really had to have a spiritual awakening. And after my 3 friends went out and one of them died around sex, they were sober, they went out, they picked somebody up online, which is what I did. And somebody pulled out some drugs and they got high. And they didn't have the defense against it. So one of the things that I did was I took it on as sort of a school project, sex and sobriety. What are sexual triggers around sobriety? What kinds of things make me go out? And I actually had to write things out. I went through a really rigorous sexual inventory. And I began to ask myself certain questions. What did I really want? Some of the stuff, and I wrote the questions down because there's 10 questions, and I always get nervous when I talk, so I wrote them down because I didn't want to forget them. Where do you usually find your partners? Where is your favorite place to have sex? Where do you end up having sex the most often? What are your sexual boundaries? What are your sexual goals? How would you like to change your sexual behavior? What tools could you use and what actions could you take to achieve your goal? What are your sexual fantasies? What specific sexual acts are your favorite and why? And where is God or spirituality in your sexual behavior? And I went through and tried to answer some of these questions. And even going all the way down to how I look at videos and porno videos. I did a couple of porno videos, and I hate that Terry Sue is here because Terry Sue is the only one that knows where they are. Most of them never made it past Betamax, so it's true. I don't think any of them ever got as far as VHS. So, but I remember. When I started to develop a consciousness around my sexual behavior, I began to, I started to look at videos differently. I've sponsored guys who did videos, and I've also seen the guys that came in that tried to get sober, the video stars that tried to get sober who came into the rooms, especially in West Hollywood. And I would see how people would treat them, and I would watch the predators come in, and it just sort of. And then I went to Living Sober in San Francisco the same year all this was going on in my head, and it was the most amazing workshop because we actually sat down and began to ask people questions. Somebody shared, one of the guys shared what a slut he was, and another guy shared, how, he didn't have sex at all anymore. And then they opened up the conversation to, how have things changed for you? And one of the guys that shared said, that he really tried to stay away from anonymous sex, even if it's just to ask somebody what their name is, or do you want to get a cup of coffee first? Something that doesn't quite make it so nameless. And the way he talked about it really made me begin to think that I need to do some things differently. I don't want to go out because I'm the kind of guy, if I go out, I'll live. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be the guy that goes out and lives, and I'm going to end up having a stroke, or I'm going to, start having seizures, and I don't want to live like that. Or I'm going to end up like a vegetable, and I don't want to live like that. And I've seen it happen. I've seen gorgeous men go out over sex and end up, having something happen to them, and they end up living the rest of their lives in a way that really scares me. So that's what keeps me sober, the idea of living. So that, combined with everything, and I started to ask these questions of myself, what are my, favorite sexual fantasies? And I went through this whole phase where I went out and I started looking at sex as an experiment. And I started going to avatar meetings because I was curious about bondage and sadomasochism, and I pursued it, as truly as an experiment, and it was absolutely amazing. Not something that I really wanted to get into as a lifestyle, because my experience is that a lot of the guys that are into this, it's their whole life. And I just really want sex to be a part of my life. And and it wasn't always people that I didn't know. It was like I developed relationships with these people first. I asked them questions. What do you like to do? How do you like to do it? How do you get off on hurting somebody? I went through the whole thing, getting tied down and tortured, and I fucking loved it, But, I even went so far in one of the avatar meetings, there was a guy who was like an expert in this stuff. And we developed a conversation, and at one point I made a special trip up there just to really try this out. I really wanted to look at sex as an experiment. And I did all that. And then what happened is I began to want to do things differently. I wanted to really get to know people. I've done anonymous sex, I wanted to get to know what was going on a more intimate level. And it's really interesting because the things that have turned me on in the last year and a half, especially the last year, have not been the things that turned me on before. A gorgeous body, a gorgeous face, big shoes, the whole thing. And what it is now is the guys that I'm attracted to aren't necessarily great looking, but they have a great sense of humor, and they have a sense of humility. And humility, to me, is one of the most sexy things, especially in a pretty good-looking guy. Even the great-looking guys, humility is amazing, but you never really see great-looking guys with any sense of humility at all. So very narcissistic. So it's easier to find sort of, the average-looking guys. And it's been very interesting. I've had a few makeout sessions. I got to tell you, though, I haven't had sex in a long time. And when I say a long time, it's all relative. I used to have sex every day, it doesn't hold the same sense of desperation anymore. I don't use it to escape. If I'm bored, to get online and start looking for guys that I don't know, they lied. I went through a whole phase where I started going to recovery houses, and a lot of the guys that were in there had slipped on sex. So I started teaching people, instead of telling them not to go online, I started telling them to, why don't we sit down together and I'll help you write a profile. That's going to deter anybody, really deter somebody, because, when we write our profiles, we sort of want to leave some sort of opening, because, if somebody, if we don't know something, if there's a sense of mystery about it, then it might make it more exciting. And for me now, I don't want that. I want to know what I'm walking into. Especially in this day and age of HIV and the cavalier attitude that many of the people that I've had sex with go out in search of sex. I read a great article in the Village Voice recently. Dan Savage does a column called Savage Love. And one of the guys that wrote in for a question talked about how he had met these two guys online, and they actually met up at this other guy's house, and the bottom was, obviously high, and wanted these guys to fuck him and come in his ass. And the other guy was into it, and the guy that called in with the question said, I play safely, and I can't do that, And he said he looked at the other guy, and the other guy, he said, looked HIV positive, which, you know, in some cases, if you're a long-term HIV survivor, there is a certain look to being HIV positive. And so what he did was he said, you know, I can't participate in this. And he left a condom on the couch and left. You know, like that's. And what his question was could I have done more? Should I have done more? And Dan Savage's answer was really great, because what he did was he acknowledged the fact that when we go into therapy, we always talk about I and our experience, and you know, we never use the word you, especially in AA meetings. We never point the finger and say, you know, newcomers, you should do this. We talk about us and what our experience is. And what he said was, you know, in a case like this, we do have to say you. We have to say, what the fuck are you doing? You know, no wonder, you know, people don't want to pay for our Medicare, Medi-Cal, you know, when we get sick. And he really laid the truth out. And what's happening now for me is that, you know, I got to speak frankly. You know, I've got to call a spade all the way down the line, because all of this flowery talk is killing people. So in that sense, you know, I have a really hard time having safe sex. I have for a long time. So what happened for a while was I didn't have any, because I didn't know how to talk to people about it. I didn't know what words to use. You know, I had been rejected so many times because I finally shared that I was HIV positive. And then I thought, well, I've been knocked down so many times, you know, but, you know, I'm the guy that says I am. You know, these guys, you know, that ask and then the guy says no, I mean, they don't know what they're getting into. So the thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is that it has really taught me about rigorous honesty, and it's so important to tell the truth in every aspect of my life. And what happens is sometimes you get really lonely, you know, and so I have stopped using sex to fulfill the loneliness, and sometimes being sober is just sitting through the feelings. You know, sometimes it's just sitting through uncertainty. And it's not sexy, and it's not hot, but, you know, I've met a few guys over the last several months, and I've gotten to know them a little bit, and I've even had some make-out stuff, but I just don't give my sex away like I used to. There's a certain value that has grown inside of me. You know, it has a lot to do with self-esteem. If I'm giving it away, geez, you know, I really must not value it very much. I even made a comment to somebody this morning, you know, when they were asking me if I was going to be doing the workshop, and he wanted to know, you know, what time it was, and I said, you can come as long as you come naked, you know, and what I had to go back and do was apologize, because it's inappropriate behavior. And it doesn't feel good and it doesn't look too good to apologize. But, you know, for one thing, I'm on the planning committee this year, and I really want to be respected. You know, the thing that has really changed me in the last year and a half is a relationship with Step 9. And all the time I hear at meetings, if we are painstaking about this phase of our sobriety, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. And I wanted to know what phase. What phase are we in at this point? And I read the paragraph before, and it's about halfway through the amends. Not the fourth step, not the fifth step, not the first step. You know, and it's not just the amends. You know, I've made way over half of my amends, but the ones that I hadn't made were the ones that made me shake, were the ones that made me want to throw up, were the ones that I did sober. You know, stealing from a sponsee sober. You know, and having to go back and acknowledge what I'd done sober and started to make amends. And so it wasn't, you know, it was the really hard stuff. And what has come from that is a real sense of strength. You know, when it talks about, you know, we will be amazed before we are halfway through, I want to be amazed. I want to be fucking amazed. I want to be able to look at myself. I want to look at my personality, my character, my integrity, and say, that's amazing. That's what I want for myself. And I've never had that. I've seen people who, you know, where it just sort of comes naturally, but I've got to work for every bit of integrity that I have. And I want to be amazed. So what I've realized is that I have to be honest. I have to do the hard shit. You know, I have to go back and make amends to, especially sexual. You know, I mean, how many times have I just used a guy, you know, didn't even know his name? You know, and so what happens now is I have to acknowledge people. I have to look in their eye. I have to see who they are. I want to know who they are, you know, because it's a sign of respect. I want people to know who I am. You know, yeah, the sex could be really hot, but, you know, it might not be so hot if we get to know each other. There was a period of time where I, was even on the verge of asking people to pray with me before we had sex, and that just wasn't going to go over. I can tell you right now, it's just not sexy. But I could do it in my own head and remember to invite a sense of spirit, to invite a sense of God into this moment, and God is in action. One of the things, my idea of a higher power has changed over the last several years. It went from being Pops when I got sober this time, because my sponsor called his God Pops, and it was sort of like the dad I never had. When I told my dad I was HIV positive, he said, "Boy, you'll do anything for attention, won't you?" I mean, this is sort of where my relationship with my dad has been. So the idea of having God as a Pops really appealed to me, and then I sort of outgrew that, and I went through this Catholic phase where I started collecting crucifixes, and I started thinking of Jesus as my big brother. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. I never really had a big brother, so I called Jesus my bro for a while. And it wasn't like a Christian evangelical thing. It was just to have a sense of God, to have sort of a big brother that I could really trust, And then I sort of outgrew that. And what happened was I was sitting across from this park watching these kids in this park, just sort of, not in a predatory way, just sort of, watching kids play, And and these 2 kids were eating their ice cream cones, and the little boy took a lick of his cone, and the ice cream part, just fell and hit the ground. And his little sister, must have been a sister, without a second's hesitation, handed him her cone. And at that moment, watching her do that, I got goosebumps. And if you're looking for God, you'll find it. And at that moment, God for me became an action. Because handing somebody my ice cream cone is something I never would have done. I mean, it was mine. And
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
And so what grew out of that, one of the things they taught us in my psychology classes, they had us close our eyes. And while our eyes were closed, they said, when you open your eyes, look for something blue. So I opened my eyes, and all of a sudden the blue popped out everywhere. It's sort of like when you buy a new car, all of a sudden you see the new car everywhere, and it's not such a unique car anymore because you're seeing it everywhere. But if you're looking for God, if I'm looking for God, I'll find it. It'll show up in the most amazing places. When I started taking all of these new perspectives, I still watched porno because I certainly wasn't having sex with anybody else, so I was watching porno, and I began to look at the guys in the pornos the way I looked at myself in my video. And I remember how I felt when I was making that video. There were a couple of them, but there was one in particular where I walked in to do the scene, and the star of the scene looked at me and then looked at the director and said, "This is the best you could do." And I had so little self-esteem that I went on to do that scene, and I remember how that felt, and I know what it looks like on video. And so I began to look at these guys in these videos and thinking, I wonder if, they had a bad day like that too, and they're just doing this because they don't know what else to do. I was certainly at the bottom. The options were pretty slim. I was hooking Santa Monica Boulevard, and a video was a step up. They're giving away porno video packs at the raffle this year, and I made sure that they knew that I didn't think that was appropriate, because what if one of these guys in these videos comes in trying to get sober this weekend, And that's where my head goes. That's what I think about, sex has been such a huge part of my life. Being gay, not wanting to be gay, being HIV positive, not wanting to be HIV positive, being an alcoholic and not wanting to deal with it, not wanting to deal with all the feelings, and using sex to escape it. Sex is an action. Love and God are an action to me now. And if I'm looking for God, I will find it. And if I don't know where God is, I'll ask him to show himself. And it just doesn't come quite so easily, and it's certainly not anonymous. If God's going to be in every moment with me, I have to make sure that he's there, because it ain't just going to happen. I have to be conscious of it. So being conscious about my sexual behavior has changed the way things go. You know, it's not about sex and sobriety for me anymore. It's about wanting to connect with somebody on a much deeper level, about wanting to find out where their humility comes from and what their sense of what makes them laugh, you know, and that kind of an attraction where, you know, you're humbled by their spirit and you're entertained by their mind and you want to give them something of you that nobody else is going to get. And these are all ideals of mine. I certainly fall short on a daily basis, you know, but I try. That's the goal, you know. And if I want to be amazed, I have to do amazing things. And so, you know, I think that's probably enough out of me. I would love to hear what you guys want to talk about, you know, and instead of, you know, it's not really a meeting, so if you just want to share your experience and crosstalk and ask people questions, you know, about each other, you know, what words did you use to meet that guy, you know, so let's open it up that way and let's really use this as, you know, not just something we're sharing about, but something that, hey, you know, you might want to try this, you know, and really see if we can't help some of the guys in this room to maybe have a new perspective and find something amazing. Thanks for letting me share.
Sure. Yeah, I guess as Brian said, we'll just open it up for open participation. Who would like to share?
Questions, answers?
Yeah, whatever.
Do I need to start picking people?
Thanks, Brian. I'm Brian as well.
Hey, Brian.
You know, I was hearing what you were saying, and it sounds like you've, and this is what I heard. You started from one place, and you worked in sobriety to get to this other place, where there's more, the road is narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I came into sobriety with a narrow road, and during my sobriety, after 5 years, became sexually liberated and opened up the Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm.
Really has been there ever since. And now I'm trying to find my happy medium.
Mm-hmm.
My conflict is that when I start narrowing my road, it feels like the, you know, crudity and these other things that I'm not comfortable with anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go through that?
You know, I don't know what being a prude feels like. But here's what I do know. I know that, that spiritual growth is uncomfortable. I know that, that doing the same thing I've always done is comfortable because it's familiar. But it doesn't mean it's good. You know, and you know, I love that you shared that because a lot of people do come in here and they've never explored their sexual behavior, and the fact that you're doing that is great. And you do need to try everything. You know, I believe you need to try everything to find out who you are. And the fact that you're going back and the road is getting narrower, you know, if you're feeling a little prudish, that's great. You know, feel that. You know, don't judge it. You know, because you've got something in mind. You've got a destination you're going to. You know, and try to remember that. You know, Oprah. I watch Oprah. I'll admit it. And a while back, a couple years ago, she had this thing with her trainer, and she was talking about grazing, and like around 8 o'clock at night, she'd start to get hungry. You know, this is when she was really fat. And she'd go through the cupboards and just sort of see what's there, and she had that feeling going on, you know. And her trainer said, yeah, you know what that feeling is? That feeling is your body eating its own fat. And so what happened was she began to look forward to that feeling. So what happened for me is, you know, this is a disease of perception. Alcoholism is a disease of perception. So, you know, if you're feeling prudish, then maybe that's what you need. So maybe you can look forward to that instead of judging it as something that, you know, you're uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. You know, so we can't change, you know, everything, but we can change our perception of everything, you know. So maybe those feelings of you growing might be something you want to look forward to, and then they'll get more comfortable. Does that make sense? Does anybody else want to share about his experience?
I've heard enough.
Hey, Kirk.
Thank you for your share. I find myself sober again. Got almost 9 months. Was almost 5.5 years clean when I decided to take a jump from a rocky perch. And, it's taken me 2 years to get back. It's not for me, I found in this journey, it wasn't when drugs and alcohol, when I was done with drugs and alcohol, that's when drugs and alcohol were done with me. And I was lucky enough to survive the revolving door. I thought, I always live when we were clean. It didn't work that way. And sex is still a big elephant in the corner I don't want to pay attention to. And I don't know, since I was young, my first relationship sort of happened like a tornado when I was 23, and I stayed until I was 37. And on and off, we broke up lots of times. And I even had other relationships, and so did he. We always ended up getting back together time and time again. This insanity played over my life, and then when I relapsed, before I relapsed, I couldn't see that coming. I ended up moving in as a roommate because I believed in my delusion that we could just be friends, and we were for about 3 months. And until I started falling in love with him again and came home and found him in the bathroom with somebody else. And what you do, and you can't beat him, join him, kid stuff, who's going to know? So it's taken me all this time to get back. And sex is just something that's cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I obsess in my mind about. It's something that I feel inadequate about. I always try to compare sex to what I think you do, what I can see the way other men have sex. I don't have sex like that. I want to. I want to be a porno star like you. I want to be able to, gorgeous and just knock one guy out after another night after night. Huge sexual predator, and have the trophies on the wall, and everything else. And, you know what? I haven't had that experience. And part of me, my sick thinking, I desire that. I remember when I did my first fifth step with Terry Sue, and that morning, getting coffee and the cats and everything. We're sitting there. I brought in my fourth step, and it's like, here's my sexual inventory. I put that down, which seemed to be a lot larger than my initial fourth step. And right now, I just find myself avoiding sex. Now that I'm coming up on 9 months cleaning it, I find myself avoiding it. I wouldn't got myself a little DVD player, those little handheld ones that you can go to a porno theater to the bathroom, so that it's so living, it's not a lot. Privacy, so,
Right.
I copied one of those bad boys, and, it's just like, gee whiz, I remember when. And it's heartbreaking. I like what you said about wanting to not give yourself away. I want to hold on to that intimacy also. I want to share that with one person. I consider myself, ideologically, I consider myself to be sort of monogamous and want that romantic, beautiful, fulfilling, emotionally, intellectually stimulating, spiritually enlightening relationship that comes down out of the skies, and there he is, and oh my God. I think we all want that to some degree. He also has to be hung like a horse, and all that stuff. But, for me, I have to surrender that I'm backward with sex. I think sex needs to be wherever God wants sex to be for me. My thinking, if I get caught up in what I think sex should be, obviously it's taking me out to.
Right.
It's led me one time after another in that same, there I am going to crown once again as Miss Incomprehensible Demoralization, and I just don't want to have that revisited. So I'm afraid even to date at this point. I want to, because I'm a bottomless pit of loneliness and need and all that other stuff. So, but I got a pen and paper, so I can sit and do a little bit of work like Terry Silver suggests I do. It actually works. And there's always the Wizard of Oz. So I can pop that in instead of the form. Thanks for letting me share.
You said something really telling during your share, and you said, you really want to have that relationship that just falls out of the sky, and you know what I think? My opinion is that they don't just fall out of the sky. And I have this quote about miracles that I carry with me. I just love this. We assume miracles arrive like bolts from the blue, but most real miracles are built arduously, stone by stone, and only when seen from the perspective of the whole are they revealed to be miraculous. For this reason, we tend to miss the wonders happening right next to us because they are occurring in slow motion and rendered invisible by the filter of our expectation. And the thing about that is that these miracles don't just fall out of the sky. You know, if you want that kind of a relationship, then, like I do, then I have to act like I want that kind of a relationship. And because if there's other guys that want that kind of a relationship, and I'm out there doing the same old crap, I'm not going to get their attention because they're looking for something that they want. So, and that happens one day at a time, one instant at a time, you know, where you see that hot guy in the public bathroom, and at that moment you don't do it, you know, because, you know, you remember you wanna have the great intimate thing, and it won't fall out of the sky. It will be something that you have built, and it will be so much more valuable, you know. So that's why I carry the miracle thing with me, because that shit doesn't just happen. You gotta work for some of it, you know.
Go ahead.
I'm Brian, I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
Thank you, that was fantastic.
Bryant.
I know for myself that I'm going in my second year and I'm dealing with loneliness, and I try to keep myself away from those slippery places that work for me, you know, online, bathhouses. And I really don't think it's prudishness. But I don't want that anonymous sex right now myself. There might be a period where it's just, you know, full on, that's what I want. That's a great thing for me at that point. That's not what I want right now. And I had a real difficulty being in this program where you're surrounded by just amazing guys, there's attractive guys, and this is the main place where I'm around them, because I'm not out at the bars, I'm not on sex clubs, and I don't have a lot of other gay social outlets, and it's difficult to know to not shit where you eat, where you're not using the rooms as a dating pool,
Absolutely.
but also, you know, there are amazing guys here that you could date, you could have intimacy with, but along with that is that the fact is that we're not a healthy group. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting in a room trying to help each other get healthy. We're working on it, but when it comes to intimacy in particular, I think gay men have issues. Men have issues with intimacy across the board. Gay men, even more so. Alcoholics and gay men, intimacy is probably one of the things I view as one of the biggest issues that we need to stay away from. We'll get sober, we'll do our amends, we'll take care of financial stuff, we might have sex, but when it comes to the dating and intimacy, you know, they're like, oh. They don't want to go near it because it's just so frightening. It's so full of potential rejection, pain, loss. It brings up so many things. And so I feel like I've got a pretty good feel of that. Like, that's not an issue for me. So when I go to explore that with someone or put that out there, like I want to date somebody or I flirt with them, you know, I usually find I don't get the best reaction back because they're just not comfortable with it. And my approach is that now in sobriety, I'm not going to put up with the same crap that I used to chase after. I used to chase after the guy that was in trouble and I could fix. When I see that here where somebody relapses and boom, they got a boyfriend. And I think, that's wow. I'm doing this work and they don't want to date me, but they want to date the guy that they can fix. They need to be over the Aala. And I find that it's difficult, but I know I have to just let that go. I have to say, you know what, do not date the guy that you need to fix because you're fixing yourself. And if I can meet somebody that we're working on fixing ourselves together, then I know that that's going to be the right option. But it's difficult when you're dealing with that reality. You're just saying, you know what, you're doing the right thing. You're building yourself back up. And somebody's going to come along, and you know they're going to have their bullshit, but it's just not going to be the same bullshit that I used to be addicted to as well, along with drugs and sex. I used to love dysfunctional relationships. Definitely not going to put up with that bullshit again. You know, I'm pretty strong about that, and it's not a judgment. It's just I'm not going to deal with that. If people put that in my way, I'm not going to play the game. That means I'll probably be alone.
or he can't give.
He can't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Did you go through that? Did anybody else go through that? How do they deal with it?
You know, it's really interesting because one of the things that changed was that, you know, it never fails. You know, I'll see a hot guy in a room and I'll look over to whoever my friend I'm sitting next to and I go, buddy's probably got a week. You know, because it just never fails.
That's right.
You know, I saw how it looked when somebody else with more time would go up to these new guys that I wanted to go up to, and I didn't like the way it looked. You know, I'm vain. You know, vanity serves me. You know, and I think that predators have a certain look, and I don't want to look predatory. You know, so I didn't go after the newcomers, and what happened was, you know, sometimes after that, the newcomers start to hit on you. And what happens when you don't let them is they begin to trust you, and they begin to come to you because they know you're safe. And let me tell you something. You know, I have a friend who has been in and out of these rooms, our little friend that's been out of these rooms for years and years and years, and he's, you know, a lot of people have always thought he was very cute, and he's gotten around the rooms, but I would never, you know, I would invite him to my house to stay on the couch. I never touched him. I never, you know, did anything appropriate or inappropriate or suggestive with him. And what happened was, one time he really needed some help, and he called me up, and he was in tears, and he came to my house. And I got to tell you that the feeling that I got that he was sharing this with me was so much more amazing than, you know, any load we could have shot. You know what I mean? I mean, to put it crassly, I mean, it was really, and so what happens is you begin to look at what's valuable and you begin to wait for dessert, you know? Mm-hmm. Just like my mom said, just like your mom said, you know? Don't give the milk away or they won't buy the cow or whatever, you know? And, it's true, you know, that shit is true, you know? In their own little way, they're right, you know? So that's sort of my experience. And then there's another guy that's really cute, got his shit together, and he's been teasing me. You know, he comes up to me and he teases me. And I actually said to him last week, I said, you know what, I really wish you wouldn't tease me. I mean, if you want to hit on me overtly and say it, that's great. But, you know, I mean, I didn't say that. But what I did, that's what I was thinking. But what I did say was, don't tease me. You know, I don't appreciate it. And that's uncomfortable to say, you know. But like this guy was talking about, I have something I'm working towards. You know, and if somebody wants to be a part of that, that's great. But I have to stay focused on the goal.
My name is Jim. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Jim.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for asking me to be up here too, to be your leader. You know, you said earlier that this is a disease of perception, and my whole life has been, you know, a perception of no one wants you. You're ugly. And you get what you can because you're not going to get it later, or you know, it's that whole I'm not enough, so I've got to settle for whatever comes along, and especially sexually too. You know, one of the things that I've realized in sobriety is that that's not true, that those are lies, and that I've spent a whole life looking for sex. I thought sex is what I wanted when intimacy was what I really wanted. You know, and intimacy is. Sex is part of intimacy, not intimacy part of sex. You know, it's only 1/5. You know, I've had to learn a lot of things. You know, my disease, that disease of perception, has lied to me my whole life to make me distort reality to the point where I don't trust my history, to the point I just did my 4th step, and I've had to go back and look and say, you know what, I cannot honestly say that my perceptions of these people, places, and things were what they were because they were so distorted by the disease. Another thing I've had to do is I've had to let God into the bedroom. You know, God is in the rest of my life. Why keep him out of the bedroom? You know, when I run into a person, you know, and it sounds prudish. You were saying prudish. I don't know what prudish is, but you know, I've never been called a prude. That's for sure. I've had to look at my own behavior and say, well, what would God say about how you're treating that person? You know, what would God say if you were treating him that way? You know, and I've really had to look at my own behavior, because it's about my behavior. It's not about anybody else's behavior. It's not about me telling you what I think is appropriate for you, leather, whatever. Whether I was chastised for wearing a harness at the AT Center, you know, here last week, and you know, it had to come down to I had such an issue in my mind about it. How dare you treat me this way and all this. And the reality is there comes a time when no matter how big a resentment it is, how valid or invalid it is, you have to let it go because it's ultimately more damaging than anything else. And part of my sexuality has become that. I've had to let go of things that I really like to do because ultimately I'll lose myself, and I can't stay sober if I don't have myself. You know, I lose a little bit of me every time I do those things. Every time I treat someone, like you say, like a dildo or like an object, I lose a little bit of me, and I can't do that in sobriety anymore. So, how do you feel about that? Is that?
You know, I think that everything is. It's so weird to be asked those questions, you know, because I keep thinking we're at a meeting and we're not at a meeting. You know, that's the great thing about being sober is it's a process,
yeah.
You know, and we do grow out of stuff,
yeah.
You know, and we play around with it and we wear it and, you know, we see if it fits and it changes. It has to. Otherwise it would get boring. You know, the idea of yeah, that's all. I mean, it changes. It's a process. Everything changes. The idea of God staying the same for me is ridiculous, you know, because my spiritual needs change all the time, you know. And right now, my idea of God is an action. It will probably change eventually, but right now, it's really great. You know, it's because I'm changing, and we change in every area of our life. And if we don't, then you know, we have a more of a chance of drinking and using again, and then we have nothing. You know.
Thank you. Terry Sue.
I'm Terry Sue, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Terry Sue.
I adore you, Brian. Thank you so much for a terrific share. Our perception of porn stars and video and porn stuff is a little different. I have a lot of questions.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I have a lot of things that just come up and really keep you going, keep me going. I'll stick to me. But the one question I want to ask, and I really have no history, I have no experience, and I sponsor a lot of guys that do have the experience, and I don't understand it. And I've had sex with people that were on crystal. I don't understand crystal meth. I don't understand why you can't just read off and watch a video why do you have to have crystal to do that? Or why do you have to have crystal to have sex? Because I've never done it. It's not my experience, and I don't understand it. And it kills me to try to, you know, sponsor somebody to talk to them. Why don't you? Because I have, and it's like, you know, they say, what are you talking about? You've never done it. It's hard, but and today, you know, this day and age, that's the scrounge of the community. It's crystal meth. I don't understand. What is the big deal? Answer that.
It's that itch. It's that.
You know, here's the thing about crystal, and I was doing it back when it was rocks, when it was shards. You know, I was a good chick. You know, and the thing about crystal is, it completely takes me out of myself. I couldn't bear to be who I was. I couldn't bear it. And the thing about crystal is it's put in front of you, and it is alcoholism times 10. I mean, first of all, that drug is made to be addictive. So, you know, the idea of why can't they just stop, or why can't they just beat off, you know, on their own? Because they can't. They can't. You know, fortunately, when I got sober the first time, the obsession never came back. I mean, I had another slip after that, but I never went back to crystal. Thank God. I never smoked it. Thank God. But I slammed it. You know, they can't. They just can't. You know, it's just trying to. You know, you can't explain it unless you've done it, right?
Yeah. It's that itch.
Brian, thanks for your share. My name's Joe. I'm a big alcoholic.
Hi, Joe.
You know, you touched on a couple of things that really, you know, I'm sharing experience with, and that was the amazement that you feel, you know, and the miracle of that, and also this phase of our development. You know, little quotes there have always got, my attention. And they seem to be getting my attention more and more and more. Because I am doing it. I enjoy the anonymous sex thing too, and I'm a big old fucking cramp. And I know that, I acknowledge it, I share about it, I share my experience straight, and hope with people. And I recognized over like the last year that I've been doing something, that I am getting names of people, that I am talking to people, that I am calling people, that I am giving my card to, so that they have my phone number. Those are things I never used to do. I used to be walking up the street and a car would pull over and I'm in the car. And I've found over the last year that behavior is changing. Instead of hopping in the car, I'm handing them the car and say, let's do something. And that's like an amazing change for me. Totally amazing change for me. A couple of weeks ago, I found out I was HIV positive. So I'm entering into a new phase of my development. And from doing like the behaviors that I've been doing over the last year, some of the behaviors change, some of them I'm successful, some days I'm not. And everything I go through, it's okay. I don't beat myself up for it. But now I'm in a new phase of my development, and everything that I've been working on throughout the year, has come into play and it's made it quicker. I've had sex like 4 times since I found out I was positive, and I disclosed it 3 of the 4. The first one I didn't because I was really scared, and then the second one I had to because it's my duty as being a positive gay man. And I feel good about it. For the first time in my life, and it's like, I'm really feeling good about myself and in what direction I'm going. And it's by working with 12 steps. And it was really good. It's really good to see the way that you project yourself. I'm 3 years sober this time, and there's enough people in the rooms that openly talk about sex, with more time than I have, that I can look at and say, okay, that is yet to come for me, but I know it's there. I can ask the question. I know I can go to those people, and it's so much more. And so I just want to thank you for sharing this.
Thank you very much. Is that it? Okay.
Okay, that's all the time we have. The AALA committee would like to thank you for participating in this year's convention. Now, after a moment of silent meditation, please join me in the Lord's Prayer. So where does this go, Brian?
Rested up from yesterday, you're a little tired.
I missed part of most of it.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.